right, here we go.
Okay.
How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? You get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method, and that is guaranteed to make you a smarter fantasy football player. I know, giving guarantees again. But all it means to use the scientific method is to let the data guide you to the answers instead of so many people that cherry pick stats to support their idea that they just had out of the blue. And join me as he does twice a week during the regular season. After all, he is the fantasy professor. He's a real professor. It's John Bush. And John, we're getting to that time of the year in fantasy football where we start looking ahead to the playoffs.
Yeah, we got Mageddon's coming. Uh, and uh, I haven't even thought that far ahead. I need to. Yeah. Maybe tonight I'll kind of work on it where uh, I just got to, I'm just fighting in the trenches. Sometimes you have to look a little further around than just, right in front of your face. And now's a good time this, this week. It's a little bit easier, but we got week 12 is it? And week 14, there's 6 teams on by something like that's going to be crazy.
It
Uh,
does get lean.
yeah, it's going to get lean, so get ready, folks. So I do want to comment, Dennis, I need to send a thank you. You added to my Christmas cash with your 3-leg parlay for Thursday. I was sitting there thinking, does Dennis know what he's talking about? He's crazy. He's crazy. And I said, but $2, let me throw. And I made 5 times my money or so, Dennis. So thanks. That 3-leg parlay of the what was it? Taking the spread and
Under
Jalen Hurts.
anytime touchdown for
Yeah,
Hurts.
and
Yeah.
let's see, what else did we do?
And the
The
under.
under.
Yeah.
Yeah, the under. Yeah. So I was pleased. In fact, I forgot I did it. And so when you said you hit it, I'm like, did I hit it? And the next morning I went and looked and I sent you a thanks. So yeah, thank you very much. That was a good call. I enjoyed the game. I felt I felt like things were a little slow early, and I was like, "What
Oh
is
yeah.
going on here?" But it really picked. Saquon picked it up, and he's boy, has he been a good pick, and so glad I have him. I should have had him on all 41 teams, but I think I have him on about 8. And I can't complain other than I should have had him on 8 more, right? You never have enough of on the winners, and hoping I'll hit on some other running backs. But the running backs in some of my teams have kept me afloat with Godwin going down and
Oh.
DK Metcalf in and out, Tyreek
Oh.
Hill being hurt,
Ah.
Rashee Rice being injured. I mean,
Oh.
it's kept me in the game on some that probably I would be a lot stronger, but it's kept me in and have a shot at the playoffs and just hoping to get lucky here. But anyway, thanks for the tip on the parlay. And of course now, Dennis, you're under the gun to try to top yourself this week or the Sunday games.
Yeah, and again, the whole concept in parlays, in my opinion, is finding that magic size of a parlay because they're so tempting when you see the odds add up when you're going for like these 10-legged parlays and you see the odds and you're like, oh man, that's juicy. But there's a reason the odds are juicy. you won't hit them. And, again, the whole concept with how I play parlays in football goes back to my horse race upbringing. It really does. My dad loved 3 or 4 leg parlays. That was the maximum he would ever do. And he also, in horse racing, had a concept where he took money out. So if he had a longer parlay that he was going to play, he'd play sometimes a show parlay all night at the harness races. After the third leg, he started taking what he jokingly referred to as the rake. So he would take out about 15 to 20% of the money, roll the other over. And that way, even if he missed on the parlay, on the longer parlay, he made money for the night. And he definitely never lost money when he did that, unless he missed the first 3 legs of the parlay. And that was the key for him, was if I'm going to play longer, take some of the cash out. And in horse racing, you can do that because you're not physically making that bet over 7 races. You have to put the bet in every race. So you could take some money out. In football, it's being given the option to cash out after 4 or 5 of the legs if it's a 6 or 7 leg parlay. And I'm quite often tempted to just take the cash because I remember the parlay rules. But generally speaking, I won't do too many parlays over 4. I like 3 or 4 is my magic number for football. It rewards you with a nice enough odds that you don't have to hit every one to make a profit. And it's short enough that you can find the angles to support that. So yeah, and actually, I don't have a gripe of the week this week, Professor. I just have a philosophical statement of the week,
Okay.
and it goes to gambling as well.
Okay.
There's gambling involved around this because and if I'm a little sluggish tonight, or today as we're recording this on Saturday morning, I apologize because I was up a lot later than usual watching that epic event yesterday, last night.
Epic.
It epic event. This
Okay.
this huge battle royale that was
Yeah.
going on, and of course, just a gimmick to get a streaming service to be more popular
Yeah.
by having this big epic event. And the thing that amused me and actually drew me into wanting to watch this epic event was the cockiness of one of the contenders even saying, "Hey, I know you're only filling up the arena to see me." And I thought that was so arrogant and cocky. I was like, I gotta watch this person to get absolutely whacked tonight with that kind of cockiness. So I stayed up a little later than usual, watched it. We already have the streaming service, so I didn't have to subscribe just to watch this big epic event, which, seemed like it would never happen. Just going on and on. And, like 80% of the people on Twitter, when polled, said that cocky, son of a gun was going to get beat, and I was like, wow, 80% are all on this, the one side of this. I'm kind of wondering if this will go the other way. And it absolutely did, because the Purdue Boilermakers beat the tar out of the Alabama Crimson Tide in basketball last night at Mackey Arena, with it has filled up 78 games in a row. So it wasn't for those brash up and comers. They didn't fill the arena. The Boilermaker fans filled the arena. And I was happy to see number 2 in the nation, Alabama, go down to defeat. First time in the history of Mackey Arena, which dates all the way back to the late 1960s, that Purdue is able to beat a non-conference number 2 ranked team in their own house. Whose house? Our house. Boiler up. Oh, you thought I might be talking about that other event that was going on last night. No, no. I was talking about Boilermaker basketball. Ah, the brash youngster got slapped around. Everybody said, Boilermakers wouldn't be anything without their big 7 foot Zach Edey going to the pros. And they proved that they've got some players left on that team. And I was excited to see my old alma mater, Purdue University, Boiler Ball, victorious again.
Well, I'm glad. Uh, I was worrying about my 41 fantasy football team, Dennis. I'm going through my getting drop ads, and I got important things to do versus watching these folks prance around and slug each other. And so I did not watch the big boxing fight. I didn't watch your Boilermakers. I didn't. I was watching subtitled "Who Done It" from is it Norway? Maybe it's Norway. Something my wife likes. So that's what I was doing that, and then making a few bets and on some nags down at Delta Downs, and
Oh,
yeah, playing a little bit of horses, getting the horse pie in the face last night. It was a lean
oh.
night. Yeah, lean night there. So, but
Yep.
anyway, starting to try to figure out some things. Finding myself worried about quarterbacks.
Yes.
With I drafted a lot of Dak. Had a lot of
Yep.
uh, love, and I think he's coming back now, so I think I'm okay there. But it's been an up and down season for the quarterbacks, and had a few shares of Lawrence, having to kind of, I don't know if he's coming back, so
I don't
I'm
think he will.
I'm assuming he's not. So I'm trying to pick up some of these up and coming. Bo Nix is one that is I've been able to get. Been surprising. There's a coach there that helped my New Orleans Saints go and win a Super Bowl, our only Super Bowl. So Sean Payton, he's brash. He has lots to say, but he's I think he's done well this year with the defense. It reminds me of some classic Saints where the offense wasn't the best thing ever, but the defense kept them in the game, and I think Denver's kind of going that way. I think next year I even think they might be doing better than this year. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. If I was in Dynasty, I think Bo Nix would be somebody I'd be looking to maybe acquire versus some of these older dogs that maybe I'm still hanging on to. And going to the Herbert has been doing
Oh, yeah.
well, and
Yep.
whatnot. So it's been the Chargers are the most interesting team to me, and I've actually got some data to show you, Dennis, and it's very intriguing. And the Chargers stand out versus all the other teams in one aspect that I'm looking at right now. So I don't know if we want to go to that.
Yeah, let's jump into that. And while you're getting that up there, I'll make a comment that I saw about that boxing fiasco last night.
Boxing
So the
fiasco.
Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, the old guy versus the brash young guy. And the best comment I saw about that is
Yeah.
it was fitting where they were holding that match last night,
Yeah.
because there's been nothing but disappointment down there at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium all year long.
Oh, wow. That's rough. That's rough, Dennis. That's rough. So, anyway, I have put some of this information
That we
up.
teased the other
Yeah,
day.
yeah. So, I've got it up on my snaps report. This is the scoring data So I've got the regular snaps that you can follow the team, the players, looking at their snaps weeks 1 to 10. But I also track the scoring. And what I've done for the 10 weeks, this is PPR points per snap at the positional level for each team. And I'm showing you Arizona here. Uh, and weeks 1 to 10. Here's the average for the 10 weeks. And then what I did was broke apart the average for the first five versus the next five. So 1 to 5 versus 6 to 10, and got a simple subtractive difference. Anything that's positive would be in green. So there's improvement. And, in red would be declines. So, for instance, Arizona has improved on running backs in the last 5 weeks, but declined in wide receivers, that kind of thing. So, I marked each team that way, summarized it, and looked position by position. And this data is there, and sorted. Well, this is by team level. But what I did was sorted by difference and marked the highs and the lows used in the box and whiskers. So when I sort, for instance, running backs here, let me sort uh, uh, I'm sorry, quarterbacks, team high to low, no difference. Small, large, no, large or small. And you can see the teams that have increased: Drake May, New England, San Francisco, New Orleans, because New Orleans had Spencer Rattler and Carr got injured and now he's back. So, you got to take what the data's telling you. Think about it. Philadelphia's improved. Look at the Chargers, Tennessee, Denver. There's Bo Nix, and Cleveland have all improved in the last 5 weeks in scoring for the quarterback position per snap. The decliners, Vegas, the Giants, Cincinnati.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have to. I mean, I'm not saying Burrow's been doing bad. So you got to, but he hadn't been doing as good as he was the first 5 weeks, Dennis. See, because,
Interesting.
yeah, so if you sort here, so the bigger picture is I took each column and did the highs and lows by colorization. And we, oh, and then you could see, but something like Baltimore, you can see is
That's about as consistent as you can be.
yeah, Baltimore, Washington, right? Tampa Bay, Cincinnati. But I was just looking at the actual subtractive numbers because I wanted to kind of see who's been improving. If you're trying to pick up, a quarterback, if you lost Dak and buys are coming, I'm just saying these are the improving ones. So Winston, Bo Nix, maybe Levis. I don't think Herbert might be out there, but I doubt it. Carr could be out there. Drake May. I'm just saying there are opportunities here. There's something happening in these last 5 weeks. And the worst, of course, is Indianapolis. They keep flipping like an old fish out of the water, flopping and flipping around, and they don't know what they're doing. I mean, do I play Pittman this week or not? Well, he's good with Flacco, bad with Richardson. And then there's others that are maybe better with Richardson. It is confusing. And so who knows? Next week, it could be a third quarterback. I don't know. It
Well,
is hard to deal with that question. So, anyway, Dennis, I did that. I colorized the team number, and lo and behold, and I hadn't even put this up yet. So, lo and behold, summarize the data is this way: each team the position, quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver. If it's green, that means they've improved in the last 5 weeks. In red, declined. And I'll draw your attention to the Chargers. They have
Yes.
increased everywhere, Dennis.
Yep.
Isn't that amazing? So versus Houston has declined. Notice running backs. Only thing keeping Mixon's keeping them going. Dallas has actually comparatively their running backs have kept them going there. Cincinnati has declined quarterbacks and running backs. Doesn't mean, it's like, oh, bad, I don't need to play Cincinnati. This is just pointing you to depth plays, to pickups, to drops, these kind of things. That's what I'm trying to do is give us some view here. Look at Vegas. Looks like the tight end is keeping them afloat, right?
That's
Brock
it. Yep.
Bowers. You see, so I think you get an insight into these teams looking at this shorthand, looking at these last 5 weeks scoring. So take it what it's saying, folks, that it's giving you pointers as to what's going on. And if I get a chance, I'll do, weeks say 11 to 15 going into the playoffs. Maybe I'll come back. It may be too late by then. So I think now's the time to look in some of these depth plays and to see if there's opportunities for us to invest, a little bit. Some players are dropped, or maybe, the handcuff to the handcuffed are out there. Some cheap plays that might be worth your time here. But anyway, I just want to note the Chargers that is really are coming on here. I think it's really amazing what they've done the last 5 weeks using these metrics. So, if you had asked me what's the most improved team, and I'm not, I probably wouldn't have come up with the Chargers, but they stand apart the rest of the league, Dennis. That's why I like these different methods and these bigger landscape views of the data.
And I love it too. And I'll point out one too that I stumbled across, and it's showing up in green for an unexpected team at one position, and that's the Carolina Panthers. Last week, that was the first time that you've had back-to-back 8+ point PPR games at the tight end position since Greg Olson with
That's what I'm
Carolina.
saying. They have been
And
sucky.
yeah, and they're improving. And so it's good to see this data because it does clue you into a few things. And I knew the Chargers were getting better at real football.
Yeah.
Okay. They're scoring more points. Their defense is really, really stubborn. And they're getting to be the team that I wouldn't want to face in the playoffs in real football right now. But what has been happening for the Chargers is we're even seeing, you know, Palmer, Quentin Johnson, and Lad McConkey all improving. Yes, it was from a low level for them. They're improving to the point where they're not going to be bad flex plays
Mm-hmm.
during the Mageddon weeks of weeks 12 and 14. I mean, if you need some replacements, this chart will do a good job of that. And I'm really pleased to see one other guy in green, and that's the New England quarterback, because in a lot of my dynasty leagues where I'm always in Superflex dynasty or 2 quarterback dynasty leagues, I'm always very deep at quarterback. I will sacrifice other positions to build at quarterback, good young quarterbacks, and then I can draft into the other positions. And I've got, so I have some teams where I have Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, or I have Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. So on one of my teams, it's 2 quarterback. I have the choice every week between Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield. Okay. So 2 of those 3 are out this week. Stashed in my taxi squad was Drake May. So even though I had 3 very good quarterbacks that I, in in two quarterback leagues, Baker Mayfield, even preseason, you knew was a good, solid quarterback. You didn't expect him to be as good as he's been, but you expected him to be top 20-ish on many weeks and that you could play him. So having Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, and Joe Burrow, you'd say, why did you spend a draft pick on Drake May? And that's because you can never have enough quarterbacks in a two quarterback league, especially because this isn't super flex. I can't, if I don't have two quarterbacks not on a bye, I get 0 points. So sometimes you have to play the backup to your starter just in case he gets hurt because you didn't have anybody else, or you play somebody else's backup that's likely to come off the bench. I didn't have to worry about that because I have 4 viable quarterbacks. And in dynasty, that's very important in two quarterback leagues because you can never predict what the bye weeks are going to be. They change every year now. Used to be if you had quarterbacks from different divisions, you were pretty sure you're going to have 2 available. Now they don't do that anymore. The division doesn't take the week off anymore. So it's very random and very tough to predict, but I'm glad to see some of these improvements because they're teams that I'm tapping for players at the position. And, it's good to see him going in the right direction.
And I went down to the 59% view so everybody could see the whole picture here. So, things that I wonder about, Dennis, for does this give us insight into the playoffs a little bit? In other words, how predictive is this, 5 window week? I mean, I haven't done that work yet, and again, I just did 5. Maybe it should be 3 or 4 or 6. I don't know. But I wonder, and if when I get fun time is the off season time, that's one of these questions I would like to see there is that, and just kind of wonder about it a little bit. Are there any surprises? To me, the surprise that I've been sad about is Chicago and Swift. He had some good weeks, but then there's been some blah weeks, and I think just the whole team is not doing what they need to do, and I think that's cost Swift some point scoring that we could have used on some of our teams because
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so that's always a danger when let's see, Swift, where was he at last year?
He was
Was
like 24th, 25th ish.
Yeah,
He
but
had very,
he was a good
yeah.
candidate to draft though. But what
Oh, yeah.
team was he on?
Well,
Was
he was
he
on Philadelphia last year.
Yeah, so
So,
he was
but
on
he was,
Philadelphia,
but
did
they,
pretty good,
yeah.
kept you in the game. But this year, I think, basically, if you're in the middle of a train wreck, it's kind of hard to deal with everything. And I think I know the wide receivers have been improving, but I think people would say, that some of the wide receivers are being underutilized and played on Chicago as well. I wonder about some of these things. Is this injury driven? I mean, look at Dallas. It's just extra sad,
Oof.
and I don't think this is going to get any better in the next 5 games. In other words, the question I would have, if I looked, say, 5 years and looked at this kind of data, would this be telling me, I probably do not want to have a lot of Dallas players going into the playoffs kind of, in other words, is this predictive going back to that original question. What about Houston? Do you think it's going to get better? That kind of thing. I just wonder. And Indianapolis with having the sad quarterback. I guess maybe I'm thinking impact. What's the impact in the next 5 games or having a quarterback that's declined, you know, games 6 to 10? Is that telling us something or not? And Dennis, I don't know the answer, but this is part of the scientific approach is you get some of these data points and it should spur on more studies to try to use this data to answer that question. So I'm just wondering, and I'll be curious now that I made this chart, come back off season, just, this little snapshot did that tell us something or not? In other words, having a declining QB and RB, is that something different than having a declining 3? In other words, this is a 2, Dallas is a 3, Houston's a 3, Vegas is a 3, you know what I'm saying? Versus, say, Tennessee's a 2 versus Tampa Bay's a 1. Of course, there
Yeah.
are some teams that are none. Rams, Arizona,
Detroit,
Detroit,
Green
Green
Bay.
Bay. Is that telling us something? Just kind of a simplistic view. Is that telling us something about playoff situations that we can use? So KC, it would be, if we did a plus minus, it'd be a +1,
Yeah.
right? That kind of thing. So is a +1 good news? You see, I mean, but if you don't play with the data like this a little bit and explore, you don't get a jumping off point. And that's the scientific method gets you to these types of data situations and it invites further questions and studies. And that's what drives us. And I think that gives us some advantages, Dennis. And I think we will benefit. Like I said, the only problem is I got too many questions, not enough interns.
but having questions is good because if you have questions, it's gonna steer you in hopefully the right direction. Or if you have questions and it steers you in the wrong direction, you're going to discover that very fast and you
Yeah.
can go in a different direction. So a couple of things here that
Mhm.
I'll comment about. First, the methodology. I absolutely love because the chances of this change being just due to easier offenses in the first 5 and tougher, I'm sorry, easier defenses to face in the first 5 and tougher defenses in the second 5 is very small. The chances of it just being random placement of the games where a team faced 5 juggernaut defenses in that 5-game stretch is very unlikely. You might face more tough defenses, but you're not going to be 5-0. Okay. It might be 3-2 type of a deal, or going the other way where you might have a slight advantage. But I don't think the advantage on defensive matchup is definitely what is doing it. Now, the thing is, we can also calculate that.
We could
Okay.
calculate, Dennis. I could do the IDP or
Yep.
some other DAPS or something. I could have another metric sitting out here and we could look at the other side of the coin. If you think of the offense as the heads, we could look at the tails. Maybe
Yeah. And
that's
so,
something to think about for
so
next
we
year.
could, we could definitely know, okay, in this first 5 games of the season, they had 3 tough defenses, 1 easy defense, and 1 neutral. Okay. Because
Or
we
you
do
could
have
even
those.
do a DAP. You could do a
Yes.
point like we had
Correct.
3 extra tough. So it's a -3 situation in
Yep.
the first 5. The next 5, maybe we had a -1. So it got a little easier.
So
That
the
kind of
other
thing.
Yes, so that's one additional layer of data that we can add to this. So here's the other additional layer of data that I would like to see as far as when I'm looking at the results. I want to also see by position, okay, Atlanta's in a green as far as improving.
Yep.
Where is their offense in the totality of looking at the position? So in other words, you could be green green
Hmm.
where you are top 25% plus you're improving at the top 25%. That's something I'm going to bet on. Like if you
Well,
are
I mean, that
improving,
data is sitting
it's
here.
there. It's all
It's
there.
there.
It's all there. It just
I just
it,
hadn't presented that.
yeah, it's very easy though to
Oh yeah.
go and look at that data in its entirety
Yes.
and see, because if a team is increasing but they're increasing from such a low level,
A
are they
crappy
going to
level.
continue to are they going to continue to see the increase, or are they going to level off? Those are other things that we can look at with this data. But what I love about this is there's usually a reason, and there's usually some hint of what is going on here. And like for Buffalo, so they're in red for the running back,
No,
but the
Buffalo
in
is. Oh,
I'm
Buffalo.
sorry, Baltimore. Baltimore is in
Baltimore.
red for the running back, but their running back was just insane for the first 5 games. He'd almost have to go down. But the fact that he went down that much is a
Yeah.
little
So
concerning.
Dennis. Yeah. Point 34th. So every 3 snaps was scoring a point.
Yeah.
It was one, two, three, four, like five, six. It was like seventh. Again, I'm measuring all running backs, not just Henry.
Correct. And to see that drop is concerning when you're talking
Again,
about
all yeah, and
when
it
you're talking
drops
about a
further. Yeah,
yeah, but when you're talking about a 30-year-old running back, that is concerning to me. It's not that I'm going to bench Derrick Henry anytime
no,
soon, but I'm also going to understand, hey, look, I wrote him for the first 5 weeks to fantasy football glory. He's probably going to be a neutral guy here the next 5 weeks, and that's fine. What I don't want to see is if that number had been in the red and all of a sudden that 6 to 10 week thing is also in the red, where you
well, look
dropped,
at Buffalo. Buffalo
yep,
was in the top group,
and they still got
and
better.
they're still in the top.
Yeah,
In fact, they're
yep,
like number two or
yeah,
three, and they
and
were one of the top two or three as well.
yeah,
That kind of thing.
love putting that data together and
This
seeing where
this
they
data
are.
is
But
here. It's just I
yes,
haven't tabulated it that way,
no,
and
but it's
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 there.
easy. It's easy to look and to see and
Yes.
to basically say, okay, so I'm going to count the number of greens that a team has in the 6 to 12 or 10 game stretch. And then I'm going to also look at the number of greens because of increasing.
Mhm.
And that is going to tell me what I need to know. So,
And Dennis, I could, and maybe off season, I could take these numbers and scale it 0 to 100 in each category, and then you could see percentile wise where each team was. I just hadn't done that, but
and we could even,
I
we
could
could even,
get you that calculation too,
and we could even do that versus the strength of defense. So
and we could do that as
yeah.
well. I just
So
hadn't done all that.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of layers, and but folks, this is scientific research that is happening as you speak, because whenever you start in on a scientific study of anything, if you're doing the study in an honest way, you're going to discover not only answers to the original question, but you're going to discover other data sets that you need to examine to make what you're seeing as a result even more powerful. And I love the fact that we're always chasing this goal of learning more. We're never, oh yeah, here it is. This is the answer right here. The
Yep.
answer leads to as many questions, and people are going, well, hell, I want research to give me a yes or no answer. What's giving you a yes or no answer? But it's also these conditional yeses and nos that are saying yes, but also check this. It's no different than in horse race handicapping. If I see a buyer number that is 20 points higher than anyone else in the race, it gets my attention. But if that same horse has a jockey with a 3% win percentage and a trainer with a 3% winning percentage, and that horse has a winning percentage, that was his only good race in like 30 tries. That I'm looking at that data a lot different than if I'm looking at a horse who's improving and has the class and other things to back it up. This is another piece of the puzzle, and it's a very important piece of the puzzle
Yep.
that will give us an idea of trends. And it's no different than looking at your trending for your efficiency data. That is powerful data. I want teams that are improving to be betting on. I don't want losing teams.
Yep. And moving on, here's the efficiency uh, score for week 11 for the teams, the highs and the lows. Here, Cincinnati, number one. Jacksonville, believe it or not, has, again, over the last 3 weeks, maybe sucky last week, but the weeks before, Lawrence was coming on, as far as yards, points, overtime. Vegas has been coming on. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, Philly, Chargers right there, the top. Bottom, the Jets, Cleveland, Giants, New Orleans, Minnesota's really worried me. I really
Oh,
was
yeah.
that, but Dennis, this is worrying me, and this is one of the reasons. Tennessee, Detroit has actually been less efficient, believe it or not. I know they're doing well, but their defense and they're able to run the combination. I think this data loves the passing maybe a little more because the yards, the total yards, I think is, the rushing versus the passing yards may be getting skewed. That may be a flaw in this, but this is just pointing Chicago's the bottom here,
Oh, they've been
0.
awful.
Yeah.
And Detroit, it makes sense because you throw 5 interceptions, you're
Yeah.
you're not being very efficient with your
No,
offense.
no, no.
But the fact that they're able to survive
Yeah.
5 interceptions tells you that their
Now,
defense is
and
unbelievable.
and so that's the last 3 weeks. This week I've got them number one in power ranking, San Francisco number two, and then I mean if we had a tier, they would be my tier one. Philly would be tier two by themselves. Green Bay, Minnesota, tier three. Then Atlanta and the Chargers, tier four. I mean, you could break it like that.
Yeah.
And then, you could look to see. So those are some of the power rankings. Like I said, this is just offense, Dennis. It doesn't count defense, Kansas City's defense. So Kansas City's right mid pack, but that's all they need to be. Are they not favored this week? I think they're
No,
not.
they're
Isn't that
dogs this week.
crazy?
They're dogs, undefeated dog, and it's
How is
two and a half points. It's not
is
like
that weird
it's not
or
like it's a
what?
half point pick 'em or whatever.
Or
Yeah.
when I saw that, I was like, what? And I double checked it. And who's going to beat them? I had Buffalo. They must be playing at Buffalo. Is
They
that
are.
what? Yeah.
They
So
are.
that's why. Okay. Anyway, so I guess we're getting to our Squirrel Husky situations here. If you
Yeah,
want to introduce
let's
that.
Yeah, so the squirrel and the husky games, folks, if you're listening for the first time, the squirrels are those annoying games that just chatter at you. And they're just, they're scrawny little things where not a lot of points are scored, and you've really got to use your brain to not load up too much on the players from those games, because in fantasy football, points matter. And if you're scoring a little bit of points versus a lot of bit of points, we don't like that. We like to look at the big, beautiful husky games. And yeah, we picked husky because I have a husky at home, and she's big, she's beautiful, she's fluffy, and has lucky ears too, Professor. So I might have to use the lucky ears when I'm watching the Kansas City Buffalo game this week.
Okay, and when I call in my swamp magic for your KC, I'm having to split trying to get New Orleans to win. They just, I about used up all my mojo beating Atlanta.
Woo.
And of course KC, they, with that blocking that field goal, goodness. I don't know what you call that.
that
Barbecue luck or something. I don't know what they were using, but
that was a combination of voodoo and the lucky ears from the dog
that
that
was
helped with
something.
that
I
one.
couldn't believe that. But anyway, I guess we both had a good week last week then.
Yes, we did. Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
So let's look at the squirreliest of the squirrel games, and that is Minnesota
In
and
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of squirrel game that kind of
It's
scares us,
really
because when it's really skewed to one team,
it makes me
uh,
suspicious.
yes, always have to look at that a little bit closer,
Yes.
especially when it's a big spread
Yeah.
and you got a team that is in decline
Yeah.
in
So
Minnesota.
Minnesota 25, Tennessee 13, 6 point spread 39. It's not the squirreliest of the squirrels, right? This squirrel's still a little bit active, right? It's still able to forage a little bit, grab an acorn or two. This is not on life support because we've had some of those games.
Oh yeah.
Minnesota has an opportunity. The quarterback has above average, but the wide receivers are tough. And, we're gathering data to what that means or doesn't mean. Definitely, you want to play the defense this week for streaming purposes, and the kicker seems to be pretty good. There's nothing that scares me too much. I know Justin Jefferson. When you've got these outstanding players, they can do a lot against a tough situation. So I just don't know how deep I would go with Minnesota. So that might be what, my start sit, that I might get a little worrisome past Jefferson, I guess Addison or Naylor or anybody deeper. I'm thinking Hawkinson and Jefferson, are those plays that I would be happy about. Tennessee, uh, there's an opportunity for the tight end and the wide receiver. It's the Tony Pollards, and I know Spears is back, and they need to have a lot because Minnesota's run defense has been really tough. Wouldn't play the kicker. The defense, Darnold has been making some mistakes. Minnesota loves away games, Dennis. They're one of these
Wow.
strange, yeah, they're actually more efficient away than at home. 60% more efficient away, but they're still sucky on efficiency, 8 out of 100. The only thing worse than that is Tennessee, 1 out of 100. So that's sucky is as sucky does on both those. Teams are declining. Minnesota away likes to rush a lot more, 20% more, pass 4% less. So they're going to try to rush more. Tennessee at home passes and rushes less. So that's Tennessee tends to do what they need to do at home against this Minnesota team.
Yeah, so this is a game where I wouldn't make a bet against the spread here. Um, I think Minnesota will win the game, but I'm not even that positive on that. The only thing I really like here on the lines is I like the under on this game. Tennessee's defense has been annoying. Yeah, you're not going to bench Justin Jefferson. You probably got to play Darnold if you got him, and you're playing uh,
Hawkinson.
Hawkinson at tight end. But you've got Aaron Jones coming off of an injury last game. Will he get a full game in this week? I'm not so certain. I'd be looking in a different direction. I am already looking in a different direction than Addison, and I won't play Naylor as an emergency flex this week either. On the Tennessee side of things, man, Pollard has been boring, but he's been just good enough to keep in a flex or as the second running back if you're really desperate because he's going to get the volume. Now, with Spears back, does he lose a little bit of that volume? Could be. So I might be looking elsewhere, but Pollard is one of those guys where you just kind of hold your nose and put him in your
You
starting
hope for
lineup.
10 points,
You
Dennis.
hope for 10. On the wide receiver side, Calvin Ridley has been coming on lately.
And he has
So
an opportunity again.
yeah, and Will Levis, say
Has
what
been
you will
in,
about him,
yeah,
he can get the ball downfield.
yep,
It's just that sometimes he doesn't pass it to the right color jersey,
right.
but and he sometimes takes the big sack instead of getting the pass off on a timely basis, and that is a problem with Minnesota. You don't want to be get behind the chains with this team because then they do tee off on you on that pass rush. But you know, Ridley is a guy I'd probably have in the lineups this week. In my flex or my second wide receiver or third wide receiver, if you start three, I think there's an opportunity because Tennessee has been playing from behind. Even though they got a tough defense, their offense hadn't really been doing a whole lot some weeks. Although Levis has been moving the ball a little bit more in the last few weeks. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be a close game, but 6 points is like, yeah, they'll probably cover that, but I wouldn't put a bet on it. I'll take the under. I really like the under. I wouldn't be surprised to see this one in the low 30s.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. Next squirrel game. And we only have two that
Really
meet the
bad.
definition of a squirrel. And how about this? How about a grudge match battle
Yeah.
here between Green Bay and Chicago? When those two teams get together, especially when it's right there at Soldier Field, it's going to be quite the tussle.
Yep, 25-14. It's basically 6 points, 5.5, 40. It's almost a mirror, spread wise and everything with the last game, Dennis. I mean, it is. Chicago's playing at home. Green Bay is tough against the quarterback, but
Oh,
if Cole Kmet, if you got to have somebody, there's an opportunity. It's just, I don't know if the quarterback, if Caleb is going to have time to find him. I did. I'd play him if you got him, but I'd be looking for Disley or I'd be scrounging the waiver wire for some other kind of spot play there. I've been underwhelmed. I have him in a few and I'm not playing him. I wouldn't play the kicker or the D here. Running back Swift, you hope it's like Pollard. You hope you get 10. You'll take a touchdown with 40 yards kind of thing,
yep.
Dennis. Maybe a catch or two, so get you close to median, 12 maybe. That'd be a good game. Green Bay should be able to run Jacobs all day long, and Kraft might actually have an opportunity. You want to play the kicker, and the Green Bay defense is going to tee off against Chicago. They're a great streaming this week. I've picked them up, going to use them. Passing, they are Chicago is rough and tough against the passing. So Love has got, he's better bring his lunch and supper because this looks tough. You got to play Reed, but, just on the volume. But I don't know how deep I'm going to go with Wicks or Watson or somebody else. Maybe the tight ends, the relief, the pressure valve that Kraft, gets an opportunity there. Chicago and Green Bay love to play away, believe it or not. And so Green Bay is playing where they want to play. And 42, which is sucky, below average, but compared to Chicago at 0, Chicago's declining. Chicago at home sucks. 25% efficient. That's just,
Oh.
yeah. Chicago wants to rush at home and doesn't want to pass. I guess they better be using Swift, figuring out a way to get him going, Dennis. I mean, so I think want to play Swift more than Pollard because of that tendency there, and that's why I'm worried about the pass catchers for Chicago. That home away split for passing attempts is 31% less at home. That sucks.
Oh.
That's Green Bay away uh, doesn't really rush and pass as much as at home. They're just so good with their defense, and they're going to snuff out Chicago. I think Vegas has got this right as far as the skew. And, I'd play Reed, but I'd be concerned if I had some of the other ones here.
Yeah, and here's a game where I'm a little leery about the spread because Chicago can sometimes make these Green Bay Chicago games a little tougher than the data says for some reason. Um, 5.5, though, if I'm forced to make a choice in this, I like Green Bay spotting the 5.5, but I won't bet it. I do like the under in this game. I think this is potentially going to be a really messy game.
Any
One other,
weather issues?
well, minor. So
None.
I was a little concerned about the threat of rain earlier. I can pretty much say I'm not as worried about the threat of rain showers as I was a few days ago. What is going to be the case, though, is there's going to be a pretty brisk wind. It's not going to be strong enough that you look at it and say, oh, this is going to kill the passing game. But it is going to have an effect on field position with the kicking game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be about 15 to 18 mile an hour winds, and it'll be from a southeast direction. And at Soldier Field, that can be a brisk, wind enough to cause some, field position issues. There's not a lot of crosswind, so it's not going to be a huge deterrent on the passing game. But here's one thing that I have noticed in recent years, that weather and defense are cumulative effects on scoring. So in other words, if you have a game like this where you have just borderline wins where they're not really strong, but they're there, especially if it's one side of the field, it's a south or a north wind. Most football fields are laid out that way. And it's just in that 15 mile an hour, 17 mile an hour. So it's not strong enough that it's going to kill the passing game, but it is enough to be a little bit of an effect. And then you add a tough defense. There's a big difference versus a borderline wind and weak defenses. It's a cumulative thing. Then you add a little bit of light precipitation, and that would have had a more of a deterrent effect. But here, I think it's just two teams that have not been incredibly efficient lately. The Bears, that's an understatement. Their offense has been AWOL here. They played one good quarter in about the last 3 games. Other than that, they have been very wickedly low scoring. So I would expect this game to be in the 30s for points. And Green Bay, on the strength of a good running game, Josh Jacobs has been really strong, and I think they can wear that Chicago defense down a little bit there. You're playing Love. Usually, if you got them, there aren't, many teams where I've got Love and I've got a better option, especially since I've got a lot of Mayfield and he's off this week on bye. I've got a lot of Love Mayfield teams as the combo. So I'm probably playing Love, but I'm not expecting a big game. Caleb Williams is on my bench till further notice. As far as the Bears go, I'm playing Swift. If I had to, I'll play Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, or Keenan Allen. But if I've got a better option, I'm taking it. And in most teams, I do. On Green Bay side of things, you're playing Jaden Reed, you're playing Tucker Kraft, you're playing Josh Jacobs. In addition to Love, I'm not so crazy about having to play Romeo Dobbs, and I wouldn't play Wicks or Watson in this because it's not going to be a shootout game. This is going to be a heavy run game, I think, the way things are setting up with the script.
I agree.
All right. On the
We have a
other
lot of
side,
choices here.
yeah,
Some
we've got a lot of choices. So
these are not above 50,
no,
that are just automatic super Huskies, but we got some strong Huskies, not super Huskies.
no,
Which ones?
no really strong ones. Well, we got to take Buffalo and Kansas City for
Oh my
obviously
goodness.
reasons. We've got to look at that game
Okay.
because I'll be honest with you, I have not made a decision yet on who I'm picking against the spread here. My tentative pick is Buffalo right now, and I might be convinced by the data this year. What I've done, Professor, is before I really look at your data in
Yeah.
detail,
Yeah.
I give the snapshot look of what my first thought, and I go through and boom, boom, boom. Now, if the data supports that pick,
Yeah.
I feel a little bit stronger about that pick. And if the data doesn't, if the data can convince me to go the other side of this pick, and this is a very interesting, the spread in here, the over under, everything is really at that point where I think it's going to take a good second look.
Yeah. Buffalo 24, KC 21, 1.5 points, 46. I was very surprised that it wasn't the other way. Very surprised. Uh, Buffalo, KC has tough D, Dennis. Just
Oh, yeah.
James Cook, I know they're going to try to get him going. And it could come down to that. If Cook can beat the KCD, that could keep Buffalo to where if they get the last snaps, they could win. I mean, I think that's how close this game is. Shakir, tough wide receivers. I know Coleman's out. Uh, is he Cooper? Is he active? I don't.
He's questionable, but
Yeah,
he's
so
expected to play.
yeah, it's a tough game. Looks to me like Dawson Knox has an opportunity to remind everybody he's still in the NFL with Kincaid out. I wouldn't play the D's on either one. The kicker, uh, you know, I mean, you got to play Cook. Probably got to play Shakir at least in your flex. Probably Knox if you've got like Ferguson with the Dak fiasco, or yeah, you may have to go pick him up. If Disley's not out there, I would probably have to play Knox. KC should be running all day, all night. That I think is going to lower the over under, Dennis. I think KC is going to shorten this game by the running. And boy, if they just had Pacheco back this game, I think if they had Pacheco, I believe Vegas would have put them as the favorite. I really do. I really believe he's that much of a given these daps. He could have put this game on his shoulders. Dennis. They're gonna be tough when he's back. Hunt, long in the tooth, he'll take advantage. Wouldn't surprise me if they try some tricks and little shovel passes to Kelsey and, you know, Nicole Hardman, flip out for a rush with him, try to be tricky. Maybe P. Ryan, some other trick plays. I think the rushing is where it's at. And Kelsey, he may not do as good as I think he'll get targets. I just don't know if he's going to score this week. Buffalo's tough and against the quarterback. And if you've got Mahomes, if you've got another option, like if I've got Love and Mahomes and I am bouncing back and forth, I'm not happy with either situation, for optimal. So I don't know. How would you here? I'm gonna jump in. How would you Love or Mahomes, Dennis? Just real quick.
Yeah, so here's a tough one because I think Love has more upside in
Okay.
this game. But what I always worry about
Yeah.
whenever you get two really good quarterbacks going up against each other,
Yep.
sometimes the game doesn't go the way you script it, but you would think with the way these defenses are and the way Buffalo wants to behave they'd love to rush the ball. And, Cook's been doing well, but now they run into a tough rush defense. Is this just a game where Josh Allen has to do his Superman act? And will that force Mahomes to have to do his Superman act? But I would probably, Mahomes is the safer play because he never has a really sucky game.
Yeah.
But Love's got more upside here. And this game, I'm telling you, I'll probably flip back and forth on a lot of decisions here. And that's one of the reasons that I picked this game that we would analyze because one thing I've been really good about over the years is I have not let my Chiefs fandom get in the way too much of overemphasizing the Chiefs players. But there's an interesting situation going on this week with the way Buffalo attacks people on defense that Kansas City and Mahomes have been able to take advantage of in the recent past. That is, Buffalo plays a lot of zone defense. Both Kelsey and Hopkins are really strong against a zone defense. They find those nooks and crannies. Even Noah Gray is getting good at finding those nooks and crannies. But you know who else is good at that they get back this week?
Who?
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Oh, that's right. Juju's back.
So Juju is back, which gives them three options to attack the zone defense. If Buffalo tries to bring people up to stuff that box, which isn't even their style, so I don't think they'll do that a lot. But if they're trying to play a zone defense and Kansas City they'll be a very balanced attack at times where, sometimes they'll just go into that run game and they're going to run on you 8 times in a row and until you stop it. But Reed does like to mix it up. And with Mahomes and Kelsey and Hopkins and now Juju, he gives them the tools to take apart what I don't think is a really strong secondary for Buffalo. So they can find the crease in that zone, and Mahomes can get the ball out on time, which he's really good at doing. I think KC could give this Buffalo defense some trouble because when Buffalo's been at their best is when they've been able to get teams behind the sticks and they can bring the heat. and they don't tend to blitz as much, but they get a really good pass rush with four. And that's when teams get in trouble is, the plays take time to develop and they get the sacks and they just, they're starting to play behind the sticks. That's when Buffalo's defense is good. Kansas City could run the ball,
Yep.
and Buffalo will have a trouble stopping that. But after they go a couple three really good runs with Hunt, that sets up the play action pass and for Kelsey and Juju and Hopkins to find those creases in the zone. And when you've got three guys that are good at doing that versus a team that is going to play a lot of zone defense, they don't play a lot of man. I think you got an opportunity where the Chiefs could give them some fits, but I think the running game for both teams and the reason, and I think both teams will want to run. I think you're going to see a lot of Josh Allen running because that's given the Chiefs fits in the past.
Yeah.
That's going to shorten the game. So on the spread, I've gone back and forth, and I'm still haven't decided to convince me who's got the advantage home way, rushing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It seems to me that early on, KC establishes the run, and I wouldn't be surprised that they open up passing to try to put Buffalo back on their heels. In other words, the first half, people could be booing Kelsey and thinking he's washed up, and then they wake up after the adjustments. Andy Reid, I think, is going to use the run and test this D, and as you say, look around. And I think KC could really come on late in this game, and Buffalo could go to the panic mode. And Josh Allen, he could do his Superman, but when it gets crazy, sometimes he gets a little crazy with it and can overestimate what he's trying to do. In other words, if you take it too much all the time on your shoulders, it doesn't work all the time. And that could really frustrate him. And it could boomerang late. In other words, it could slip away from Buffalo late. That's why I was amazed that KC wasn't. I just think KC's more dynamic than Buffalo. That as I look at the DAPs, as I think about the players and the rankings and things, that would, as far as the betting the spread, and I wouldn't do. I just think KC has the advantage in the fourth quarter, and it wouldn't surprise me that they got Buffalo bamboozled late and it all crumbles down. Josh Allen fumbles, or gets hurt or loses, intercepts, he just pushes it too much, you know, versus, okay, let's take the loss and come back another day. That's not who he is. He's going to rush until he can't. And I think this is going to, I don't think he's seen a defense quite like this yet this year. And it's going to
No,
be
and
a
he,
surprise.
yeah, and I don't think the Chiefs defense was this good last year when he faced them in the playoffs. I
Nope.
really love this Chiefs defense. They've been so brutal to go up against. And yeah, they give up some soft yards every once in a while. Denver was able to drive on them at the end of the game last week, and that was kind of like one of these, what is going on? But overall, from start to finish, the defense is strong. So here's one area that I think gives Kansas City a big advantage. Buffalo not having Dalton Kincaid. I know Dawson Knox is a good tight end. He's a traditional tight end. He's going to line up still a lot at a traditional on the line tight end position. Kansas City will switch up their looks and convince Buffalo that they got to keep him in. They got to rely on him to block a little more than he might want to. And so I think Kansas City does an okay job against the more traditional on the line tight ends. The ones that kill them are the guys like Kittle and Kincaid and, you know, Kyle Pitts, and the guys that can line up off the line are the ones that absolutely, Brock Bowers. Those are the guys that can absolutely kill the Chiefs and what is killing their DAP. But the ones that line up on the line, if they want to neutralize them, they will line up with six guys on the line of scrimmage like they're blitzing. Two guys fall back, and you never know who it is. So that's what the strength of this Kansas City defense is when they're going against the pass. Now, the strength of Allen is he's good at handling that because he's so tough and strong and get outside the pocket, and that's when he's trouble with his legs and with his arms. So this is a hell of a matchup. I'm really looking forward to this game tomorrow. I think it's going to be, this is a good enough game that it's going to get me watching the game instead of red zone. I've flopped on this. Like I said, I was going to take Buffalo and spot the 1.5. It's not the homer in me. I'm picking KC, and I'll take the 1.5. I like the under in this game as well. I think it could be a low scoring game, but with those two quarterbacks, I wouldn't be making that bet. All right, let's look at the juiciest of the games. Let's look at Baltimore and Pittsburgh, which I think could be quite the battle as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think Philly and Washington was a great game. Notice in the same style as a
Yep.
Baltimore and Pittsburgh. So Chargers in Cincinnati has some of that as well. But let's look at Baltimore and uh, Pittsburgh here. Let's see, where's the game at? Right here. Yep. Baltimore 27, Pittsburgh 21, 3 points. Russell Wilson's been doing good. 48.5 over under. Baltimore, King Henry should win this game for them. Right here, the DAP's above average. And passing Andrews, there you go. I think their two strengths are what Pittsburgh's given them. So Pittsburgh's D is weakest where Baltimore is strong. Dennis, rushing, RB, and tight end. I wouldn't play either defense. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, and the only reason is Baltimore's just letting everything go. It's play all your
Yeah.
Baltimore, play all your Pittsburgh all day long. So that's the only way Pittsburgh can beat them is just hammer them with passing and rushing and craziness and back and forth. Baltimore wants a slower game with Henry and then peppering Andrews and slowing the game down. Pittsburgh wants high flying, lots of scoring, and keep Baltimore. They want to get Baltimore out of the King Henry Andrews and want them to having to pass and rush. And so I guess whoever's will comes through, you know, it's two very different styles of play that these two teams have and what they want to do. And Pittsburgh gets the home field advantage. Baltimore and Pittsburgh both the same efficiency, very high efficiency. Both love home. Baltimore is 24% less efficient in away games, but they are
Interesting.
improving. They want to pass more and they rush more and pass more away actually. So I think their passing is going to be limited, and I think Andrews is going to be the passing and Henry. So they want to slow it down. And Pittsburgh, on the other hand, is going to be 17% more passing all day long. Play your pass. Play Wilson, play the passers. I'm playing Wilson just about everywhere because a lot of places I got Wilson, I had Dak. So
Yep.
it's really worked out that I was able to pick him up a couple of weeks ago, and that's really keeping me in the game here.
So this is a situation where what Baltimore does poorly on defense really feeds into what Russell Wilson does great, which is
Yeah.
put up those 50-50 balls.
Yep.
But a deep 50-50 ball against Baltimore this year has been more like an 80-20 in the
Yep.
favor of the offense. So the only way Baltimore wins this game, in my opinion, I don't understand them being 3-point favorites on the road against this tough Pittsburgh defense. I think this is a case of Lamar Jackson's moving the line more
Yep.
than any data would say. I really like Pittsburgh to win this game. So I'll take the points. I don't think it's going to be a big, juicy, high scoring game. Now, Pittsburgh can turn it on if they need to, but I'm not so sure Baltimore has that same ability. Now, betting against Lamar Jackson this year is a dangerous way to go because he's got a lot of good weapons. Even Rashad Bateman has been producing quite well. That's been, I picked up a few shares of Rashad Bateman this year because I was like, man, this is one of those situations where it's an underperforming young player. He should be better than what he's been. And I bet on him at his very cheap price because by the time you get to that point in the draft, there are no sure things and you're just playing upside. And if it had not worked, I'd move on to somebody else. But I even picked up a few shares in Dynasty as throw-ins in deals. Not that I thought he'd be a WR1 or WR2, but a flex play and a bye week flex play guy. And he's worked out quite well. So betting against Lamar Jackson is not usually the healthy way to go this year, but I do like Pittsburgh. This is a game where you got to play all your big names. So Buffalo, obviously, you're playing everybody you got, including Rashad Bateman, and you're hoping that this is the game that they really unleash Mark Andrews. On the Pittsburgh side, I just absolutely love Pickens in this situation. Pickens has been really good this year. And the only thing he's lacked is a little consistency when you put some tough DBs on him. You don't have that worry with Baltimore. And Baltimore's only way to slow this Pittsburgh offense down would be to sack Russell Wilson. He's not as quick as he used to be. So they're going to have to put pressure on. They're going to have to get him because if he gets the ball off and throws these moon balls, these little high arching passes, he's got the guys to make the plays now. Because in addition to Pickens, he's also got Mike Williams now
Yep.
out there as well, who's also good at
I'm
doing the same
playing
thing.
all my Mike Williams shares this week
Yeah,
in
I think
flex.
this is a good spot to be exercising those. I'm not big on Freiermuth. He's been hard to catch on when he's going to have a big game. And in this case, it seems like if there's tougher DBs that can slow down the wide receiver, that's when he's been shining. I don't think that's the situation. And of course, you're playing Najee Harris. If you have him, you don't expect a huge game from Najee, but you're hoping he gets into the end zone. Jalen Warren's actually been coming on a little bit lately. So Warren, the play them both thing, if you're desperate because of injuries and buys, might not hate it here because I do think Pittsburgh's going to have to throw, and I think they're going to, and Warren can be hit out of the backfield too. So I think there's opportunities for a lot of the offensive pieces for Pittsburgh and for Baltimore too in this game, despite the tough matchups, because he got Lamar Jackson. He's sort of the neutralizer for the real tough. But because of that tough defense, I like the under in this one, and I like Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I could see that. It- it- I, I see two big scenarios, like I said, and I think Pittsburgh's got a higher probability of making their will happen versus Baltimore. I could see it slipping away, and once they turn away from Henry, whew, they're in trouble. I think that's you know, Henry, if you're playing it, you got to play Henry, but I'm hoping he'll collect his points earlier because I think it's could get way crazy late and could slip away from Baltimore late. So I'm hoping that Henry's, gets his 20 points first half. That's what I need, Dennis. I'm gonna put that order in to my voodoo folks down south, because I got a lot of Henry, and I need that. I need that. I need that miracle Kelsey touchdown, and I need some Henry, hard Henry, and I need some Mike Williams. So I got my order, you know, you know, have it my way like Burger King. Well, I got my order this week. Uh, and I'm spending a lot of my time, like I said, thinking about the Bimageddons, folks. Use Saturday, make sure your lineups are set, but start looking with the FFPC. You can look ahead. I don't know if you've used that tool, Dennis,
Yep.
but you can
Yep.
use it. Yeah, so start looking ahead and just see where your problems are. Probably going to be uh your RBs and WRs are going to be the issue. You'll probably got your quarterback and your tight ends, at least for me with Kelsey and Kittle. If he can stay healthy, I'm probably okay there. My quarterbacks with Baker coming back, I think I'm fine there. I think it's going to be, do I have enough RBs and WRs? And I'm hoping Estime starts ascending because I got a lot of him. So I'm hoping that works out for me and I can get some median points during the Bimageddon with Estime. So, we'll wait to see this week. I think people are anticipating Estime gets more work than we've seen. So we'll see if that's the
Yeah.
case. I'm going to be definitely monitoring that.
Yeah, he definitely got the snaps last week. He got the usage. He just didn't get a lot of points, but
Right.
that was a tough defense setup. You're right. It is time to look ahead to week 12 already because you got the Bengals, Bills, Falcons all off. And that's three quarterbacks, that's running backs, that's wide receivers galore that you're going to have in there. The other three teams are the Jaguars, the Jets, and the Saints. And the Saints have been a
Boy.
good play with Derek Carr and, of course, with Kamara.
Yep.
The Jets, of course, you got
Week
Brees
14
Hall.
is going to get us.
Oh,
Stevenson
oh,
and
yeah.
Henry, Dennis, are
Yes.
out. It's going to be
That's,
lean. I'm thinking we need a great week 14 for Connor for our shares. You
yes.
know, he's going to
Yeah.
help us.
Yeah, definitely going to be tough because you've got Brian Robinson out as well, who we've got a lot of.
Yep.
It is going to get tough because you're right. We're going to be down Mixon and Henry in the
Yeah.
draft
So
night
we're
out
going to
league.
need Connor to play hard. I need to put that order. That's a long-term order. So I'm making all the lists. You can send me the list and we'll put it all in. I think I gotta find some proper voodoo tribute. I don't know how much blood I gotta bleed to to, how much catfish blood I got to throw in the water there to make it all happen. You got to appease the swamp giddy gators and whatnot. So I don't know.
but do start to look ahead because you're
Yes,
going to need some players in there and you want to bid on them now and just
yes,
pick them up for
get them for a
free,
dollar.
get them for $1 instead of
Look at the
yeah.
scoring. Look at some of those trends in the last 4 or 5 weeks. Use some of that data to inspire some flex plays. Now's the time to think about some of these deeper plays to see if it can help you out. I'm
and
hoping.
and be ready to react and to get the right guys once you're beyond Bimageddon
Yep.
in week 12 here, especially, you know, this is when I'm going to start pivoting when with my Chimera shares, if I've got to make a move after week 12, I'm probably going to reinvest in grabbing Mims as the backup running back because I don't think Miller's coming back and I don't have faith in Jamal Williams staying healthy now. So if anything happened, if I've got Chimera shares on my team, if anything happens, I want to be protected for the playoffs by having Mims. That's once I get by a team's bye week, that's when I'll pick up the marginal handcuff
And
to my
and,
stud.
and just a reminder for Kelsey, I'm picking up Noah Gray for a
Yes.
dollar every, just a few shares here or there, but I'm building that kind of thing just to have for a dollar. Everybody's looking elsewhere. He's somebody that could be viable in these tough times ahead if
And
Kelsey gets hurt. Yep.
if the Chiefs continue to run the table, folks, they're going to be in a situation towards the end of the season during the fantasy football playoffs
Maybe they
where
don't want to play a lot of
a
Kelsey or
lot of the studs are going to be rested because they've got that quick turnaround game on Christmas Day and it's smack dab in the middle of your fantasy football playoffs. And if they have nothing to play for
yep.
on those last couple weeks of the season, obviously your league's smart enough not to have playoffs on week 18,
Yeah.
but on week 16 and 17, if
Yeah.
the Chiefs run the table here
Yep.
and they win this week, they could be in a situation, folks, where they're up by, they've got the number one seed clinched and they may not be playing anybody in week 17, let alone 18.
Perine
So
may be a good play.
Perine could be, I mean, there could
Clyde
be
Edwards
guys.
Zelaire
Yeah.
could
That's,
be where they start
yes.
pulling, Pacheco and Hunt and put these guys out there.
Yeah. They want to keep Pacheco and Hunt and Hopkins and Kelsey
Yep.
all nicely bundled up.
Maybe
I'm
Juju is a
I'm
play.
even starting to grab in some of my two quarterback or super flex leagues.
Mm-hmm.
If I have Mahomes, I'm grabbing Carson Wentz as
Yep.
that emergency
Yep.
because there's a chance. I'm not saying it's likely, but if the Chiefs keep running the table, they're going to be able to close down before the end of the year. Now, Andy Reid doesn't like to just go without them playing, but they'll only play a quarter or a half. And that's going to kill you
Yep.
in the fantasy football playoffs. So already start looking for that and be aware also that some of the teams have some tough defenses that they face in those fantasy football playoffs. So now's the time to plan ahead and head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out the professor's data. I'm telling you, folks, the efficiency data, the power rankings, the DAPS, all of that data goes into the gumbo of selecting your fantasy football lineup and your point spread picks and against the over-unders. You can make a lot of money off of that data, both in fantasy football and in real football handicap. And then, of course, head on back here next week for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks. Okay. I don't know if I have a lot of after the show. I kind of did my shtick on that I need to make a figure for that and post it in the snaps report. I just haven't done that yet. And I got to post all the daps. So that's what I'll be doing next couple hours
Yeah,
here.
love that data, man. That was there is so much power in knowing who's improving and who's declining. That's why I started putting the plus or minuses on my consistency stuff,
I
you
like
know,
that.
from
I
week to
like
week.
to watch that data. And we could look at MVP averages in by position levels. What does a team look like, with some of your metrics or the com or some of that? I'm
Yeah.
wondering if that's, I just don't know what's all available. I will showcase one thing. I was looking at a database I have access to, the air yards, the targets, and I may, if I have time this year, go in and study. In other words, what's more predictive? These target share, market share, air yards, targets, for next week's points. What's more predictive? I think I need to get around to answering some of those questions, whether what I need to kind of focus on in the future. I do need some investigations. I don't know when I'll get a chance to do that, but those are some things I'm deep off season things, and there's some other metrics that are out there I haven't tested yet, Dennis. I'll probably use principal component analysis just to try to group them together.
Yeah.
But if targets and air yards are saying the same thing, you know, that that means people will overplay one or the other.
Yeah,
And,
I saw a stat this week that was really interesting that convinced me that air yards, at least for quarterbacks,
uh-huh,
might be the most worthless information that you can use in the last, I think they said last 3 weeks. I saw this on an ESPN NFL show. In the last 3 weeks, Caleb Williams' air yards has been not only improving, but it was top six in the league.
hmm,
It was shocking. Like I just caught, it was one of those deals where I didn't catch the whole thing. I just caught a little bit of what they were saying, but and they of course didn't pop data up on the screen to show you to that always sort of reinforces it in my brain
yeah.
because when the talking heads start yapping, sometimes you get kind of lost in all the yapping. But there was there was a relationship of the air yards and Caleb Williams, and that I was like, and the guy was using it to say, well, he hasn't been that bad. Look at this, and I'm like, dude, have you not been watching?
Yeah.
Like it's really bad, and
Well,
I don't know if that's I don't know what is there
using
with that.
one data stream and making big conclusions, that in system analysis, part of the whole problem with systems is there's usually multiple data streams crossing hidden orders of interactions
Mm-hmm.
that, and I know in weather, wind and temperature and moisture and directionality, and if you're coming off 2 weeks of no rain versus it's
Yep.
been raining every week,
Yep.
there's all these interactions, and you can't just look at one thing. Those models are not built on one thing, and
No.
for people to tout one data stream, I mean, I think that gives us an advantage. I mean, that's what we're trying to use multiple metrics. And that's why
Yes.
with our consistency is trying to test all six of them and just sort out who's better and worse. And it's still not going to surprise me that we see a positional difference, like with
Yes.
quarterbacks.
Yep.
Maybe comms are better with running backs. Maybe MVP is better, and be nice to know that. And I just don't know. Maybe air yards are great with tight ends, but you're using them for quarterbacks. I
Yeah.
just I just
Yeah.
don't know. I'm not. That just doesn't sound. That doesn't sound to me, Dennis.
Well, the other one that they like to quote for strength of defense now is this expected performance. How they do against the expected performance. And I'm like, that adds so much of a subjective nature to the analysis because who's coming up with the original expectation? Are you
They're
telling,
usually just averages.
are they, but an average is
I
not
understand.
worth much. And
Yeah,
so when I
yeah.
see somebody quoting EPA, which is this, performance, the expected versus expected, and I'm like, okay, but what does that really mean? Are you just telling me it just seems to be open to a lot of interpretation. And when you ask people, how are these numbers calculated? They don't know, Professor. That's the scary thing.
Yeah. Well,
They
if
use, they're
somebody
used.
says expected, then I would, what's your confidence interval of your expected? In other
Yes.
words,
Yeah.
have you tested what you're saying and what does it really mean? If you expect, say, 50% level, I don't, whatever, what's the box and whisker look like? What's the
Yeah.
extremes?
Yeah.
What's the box look like? What is that? Is it 51 and 50, and 49? Wow,
Yeah.
that's tight. Is it 60 and 40? A little loose. Is it 70-30? Very loose.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, it's like when I'm
Show
trying
me
to
that
show,
data.
when I'm showing the tiers in my data on the consistency, on the consensus consistency stuff, you know, when you look at it and you see that there's more of a gap at tight end right now from 1 to 5 than there is from 5 to 18, it just says, well, shit, if I don't have one of the top four, who gives a flying
Yeah.
fig?
Then you
It's
use maybe DAPS and other
yes,
kinds of metrics. Maybe even, what happened last week could be more powerful than, other things.
yeah, I just, I don't know. I look at some of these exotic, I call them exotic stats that people like to use. And I think they're just using them because they've a heard somebody else use them, and so they're convinced that if so and so, I won't even, but if this guy on Sirius XM who's getting paid to be a fantasy expert, if he is using this, then it must be good. But we know that people in entertainment are being paid because they're entertaining, not necessarily because they're the best expert at the subject. And that's where I
Well,
think,
they, on the TV, they put on funny costumes and little
yeah,
skits.
yep,
It's like a pantomime show and it's like a
yes,
kabuki theater.
oh, yeah,
And it's
yeah,
just like, and notice the louder they get, remember the last level of debate is if I can shout over you, I win.
yes,
Yeah, if
yeah,
I'm loud, and act like I'm confident, then I win.
Yeah.
In gambling, this five, 1 to 5 shots going to win, and you yell it loud at everybody who's going to look at you. Well, we all know that. What are you telling us?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, tell me the 50 to 1 shot and then they win. Okay. I guess I need to listen to you a little bit. Let me have a few more of those.
Yeah.
But the loudness and the funny skits, the funnier I am with the funny puppets and you know painted face and all sorts of props, that and Dennis,
Well, it's funny you mentioned the odds because I remember, when I first came up with my game plan for harness racing, my actual, formula and everything, and I'm calculating it, and we're sitting there discussing who we're playing. And I even remember the stupid horse's name because it was, when I bet him, he was 90 to 1.
yeah.
And he was leaving from the 9 post at Arlington Park Racetrack for harness, and they were starting the race in the middle of the turn. I mean, we're talking about the win percentage for that post position was like under 7%. So, but he was a closer. And you had this speed duel. You had like 5 speed horses in the race. So you knew the pace was going to be hot. You had 5 horses that they never won unless they were on the lead. It was the perfect setup for a horse that, had all those characteristics. His name was Atasoy. And I remember he was 90 to 1 when my dad and his friends are all talking. And I'm like, this horse figures. I don't understand it. I was so shocked. I redid the calculations, and he's still coming out on top from the worst situation, had a good driver change, had everything going for him that you'd want. Yet he was 90 to 1. That'll get you to doubt. And he ended up winning at 60 to 1. And I remember my dad's friends, oh, who's the next Hadasoy? I'm like, dude, there's a reason that these horses are 60 to 1. Like, yeah, I found him, but that doesn't mean the next 5 long shots that come up in the system are all going to do the same thing he did. But it's an educational experience being at the horse track. You learn never to say that horse doesn't have a chance because you've seen the long shots that look shitty on the form come in.
Yeah.
And you also know that there's no such thing as a lock. I don't care if this horse is 1 to 9. There was one out at there was 1 to 5 shot at Del Mar the other day, yesterday actually. The horse was making its 3-year-old debut after, the last race it ran in was the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Bet down to 1 to 5 for all the right reasons. But got beat by the horse who had won 3 races in a row. Won his maiden, late to the track, was undefeated, 3 or 4 wins in a row, and was racing against this horse in an allowance race and beat him. So, that's, you're looking at this and you're going, I'm betting a 1 to 5 shot that hasn't raced in a year against a 3 to 1 shot who's got a 4 race winning streak. He's 4 for 4, or she's 4 for 4 in her career. Made no sense to me. I just looked at that. I'm like, okay. But, every expert was touting this 1 to 5 shot, of course, because the horse had the class. But, just,
Got the horse right there.
but yeah, and its name wasn't Paul Revere.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just shocking when you see people react either of those 2 ways to stuff. It's like, first of all, there's a reason that, like when a football team is 30-point underdog and wins, like Northwestern or Northern Illinois did against Notre Dame at Notre Dame earlier this year, there's a reason that team ain't going to win the next 5 games. It's it, there's these flukes that happen on any given Saturday or Sunday, but people don't realize that same theory happens in fantasy football. If you can catch those, like MVS last week, like I thought he was going to be a good play, but I thought he was going to be a good play for like 10 points.
Yeah.
But this week, you got Cedric Wilson back. Is he going to take something away? And you've got probably a different game script. I don't know. I'm not as, I probably won't put MVS in any lineups this week. I had him in one real deep lineup last week. But, you get these surprises of big performance games, but man, if you're chasing those with an exotic stat like air yards, I would think you're missing 7 for every one you hit.
I don't know. That's why I'm gonna do the test.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at it and again, I don't know if it's predictive, you know, and that's what I'm going to test off season is some of these. I do need to uh, figure that out. I haven't seen any of that. Of course, we don't have a journal that would document these findings because people like to hide them and put them behind paywalls and don't tell you. They just say the picks. They don't tell you how they figured it out. I understand. I mean, it's not science that way. That's not how they behave. I don't know. It's sad. I
Yeah.
wish it was more because that would speed up my research if I could read your research. Your peer review research would help
Yes.
me, and that's how science builds. You know,
Yes.
nobody does it independently. We're all reading what's done before, and that helps people on new things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I think we've beat that dead horse, haven't we, Dennis? So I'm gonna shut down the recording here.